Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I will be going over some very unusual stories as we continue our Dark Souls playthrough. But before we get into it, if you like videos like this, make sure you like and subscribe. And I also have a TikTok now, so check it out and follow it. As always, the stories will be linked in the description along with the timestamps. That being said, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. I should mention before we get into it, some of the stories in this video could be very triggering, and judging by the name of this one, that might apply to one of you, so viewers' discretion is advised. I stood by and allowed my wife to almost kill our son. I was happy she did it. Okay, fair warning, this one is long as hell. Apologies for that, but this is very hard for me, and I have been carrying it for a lot of years. On the advice of my therapist, I've written it all out to try to work out my feelings on it. He didn't advise me to submit it to Reddit, of course, but I have struggled with this for a long time, and I need to hear other people's opinion on it. I still really have no idea how I feel about it, even after all these years, but I will submit for judgment by the masses. I know I did wrong on some things, probably a lot of things. I tried to do my best that I could. My son was very troubled, very troubled. If you have seen the movie, we need to talk about Kevin. It will really help to understand what I'm talking about, because I swear to God, when I watched that film, I thought I was watching a documentary of my life. I felt like the writer must have had cameras hidden in my damn house. That's how accurate it was. The only difference is that in the movie, the boy appears normal to his father and only reveals his true nature to his mother. With my son, he didn't have that mask. His insane behavior was the same with everyone. From the day he was born, my son just came out wrong. He was planned. My wife and I tried to get pregnant and were ecstatic when he was born. He was wanted and loved. We showered affection on him and really tried to give him a happy childhood. But from the day we brought him home from the hospital, he was miserable. He cried for 13 months straight. I'm not exaggerating. 13 months without a break. He cried until he had no voice left and kept crying. You could see his little face scrunched up and no sound coming out, totally hoarse. There were times he would literally be crying in his sleep. I've never seen or heard of any other kid able to do that. We brought him to doctors, specialists, tried changing his diet, held him, rocked him, toys, swaddling, music, mobiles, everything we could think of. Nothing worked. 13 months of grating, grinding, no sleep hell. Once he got over the crying stage, we thought we were out of the woods. But it quickly became clear that for some unknown reason, he was just angry at being alive. I never saw that kid have a genuine, joyous smile once in the time I knew him. I saw him grin a vicious, horrible grin many times, taking a perverse pleasure from causing pain or suffering or breaking a rule. But a smile from real pleasure at something nice? No, never. Not once. He had no interest in anything positive. He was fueled by hate, and everything he did was bent toward that. As soon as he could walk, his mission in life was to destroy things. He would break or try to break anything that came in his range. Smash it, chew it, throw it in the toilet, whatever he could. After a while, he figured out how to get his diaper off and took great pleasure in shitting and pissing anywhere he could. After a while, he figured out he could hide it and started pissing and shitting in places we wouldn't find right away. Grinding into carpets, making it even more of a problem to clean, and making the house stink. When he got older, ages 9 to 15, he would piss and shit in our bed until we got a lock on our door and he wasn't able to get in anymore. Then he'd just take a dump in a hallway in front of our room. That biological warfare started around at 2.5 years old, and he never grew out of it. I'll try to speed it up, as I could literally go on for days about this stuff. But as he grew older, he became more and more unmanageable. He would bite, kick, scream, scratch, and spit at anyone trying to do anything with him. He was kicked out of school twice before he was 9, then let him back in, and then kicked him out for good. He had to change schools. The next one put him in a special class that kept him away from the other students. We had to install a door and lock on the kitchen because he would steal knives and use them to gouge the walls/furniture or chase people with them. When he was 10, he stabbed me pretty good in the hip and ass. I still have the scars. As he grew older, he grew darker. He moved into setting things on fire and torturing local animals. There was a stray dog that hung out around the park near our house. My son blinded it in one eye with a barbecue fork. He would dip cats' tails in gasoline and light them on fire. He became a violent, stinking, vicious beast that lived in our house. We couldn't do anything with him. I will take this opportunity to preempt the tsunami of messages. Yes, we had the kid in fucking therapy. He saw a psychiatrist twice a week, and had God knows how many different medications prescribed him over the years. Nothing worked. Therapy didn't work. Meds didn't work. Nothing fucking worked. He was like a poison cloud of hate and fury, lashing out at anything in his reach. When my son was 16, my wife got pregnant again. I can't tell you how different our reaction was. Instead of joy, we felt horror. This pregnancy had not been planned, and we really were at a loss over what to do. My son had been such an unending nightmare for 16 years. We couldn't take the idea of starting again from the beginning. We talk a lot about terminating, but A, access to abortion was not as easy in those days as it is now, and B, my wife was very against it. We talked about many options. In the end, we decided that my wife would have the baby, and if it turned out evil, we would put up for adoption. We knew we just couldn't do it again with another child like our son. We had a daughter. She was normal. Suddenly we saw what our lives should have been like the whole time, how things would have been had our son not been himself. She laughed at things. She breastfed without biting. She didn't have teeth yet anyway, but you could tell she was just trying to eat, not tear her mom's breast off. After 4 months, she was sleeping through the night. She was happy. She was normal. I can't describe the relief and happiness that we both felt. I don't have the words for it. This is where I believe I may have started really pulling back from my son. Up until that time, whatever mistakes I made, I had always tried to do the best for my son. I am convinced of that. I tried to help him and love him and care for him. I really tried. But when my daughter was born, my wife and I both instinctively just turned toward her. She became our focus, not from malice, but just because she was so much easier. She was so happy and sweet. Every moment we were with her was like magic. I understand this was wrong, but we honestly couldn't help it. I don't have a better explanation than that. My son hadn't given a shit about my wife being pregnant. I honestly don't know if he really understood it. But when we brought our daughter home, he started acting out even more. I didn't think it was possible, but he took it up another notch. At this time, he was 17, and we were having blowout screaming matches daily. Usually after we fought, he would storm out of the house and disappear for hours at a time, or come back the next morning. It was a relief. I started to actually look forward to our fights because it would get him away from us for a while. After the birth of our daughter, my relationship with my son was almost entirely gone. Our only real interactions were screaming at each other. My wife was even worse with him. She just had nothing left. By that time, if our son even came into the same room as her, she would just stop whatever she was doing and start screaming, "Get the fuck away from me. Get away. Get the fuck out," until he left. He started spending more and more time out of the house, which was a blessing for us. I have no idea what he got out in the world, but we were just happy it wasn't being inflicted on us. As a consequence of our son's behavior, we had invested heavily in locks around our house. All of the cheap, thin interior doors in our home had been replaced with dense with doors that couldn't be kicked through, equipped with keyed locks that my wife and I carried keys to. I know it sounds extreme, but locks and heavy doors were the best way we had found to create safe spaces from him. And again, before I am inundated with messages, I was not locking my son in rooms like a prisoner. He had free reign of the house and could come and go as he pleased. My wife and I would lock ourselves in rooms to protect ourselves from him. If anything, we were the prisoners in our own home. On the day in question, I had fought with my son in the morning, and he had left the house in a rage. My wife and I were enjoying some peace and quiet in the kitchen, while our daughter napped in our bedroom. And then my daughter began crying. Any parent who has young children can tell you, you get used to your child's cries, and you can tell after a while what they need. They cry differently if they're hungry or need changing or are just restless and want to be held. Babies can communicate pretty well before they can speak. This cry was none of those things. This cry was terror. The second we heard it, my wife and I were both up out of our chairs and running to the room. The door was locked, of course, and it took a few seconds to get the right key and get it open. My son was in the room. We lived in a bungalow, and the bastard had climbed in the window to get to her. He was standing over her crib with a steak knife in his hand. I have no idea where he got it. It wasn't one of ours. We control our knives very carefully and always kept them in locked drawers. I think he may have stolen it from one of our neighbors' houses. He had broken her skin twice already, once in the belly area and once on her arm. I could see blood running down. When I entered the room, he was dragging the back of the knife down her face, not cutting, almost tickling her with it, teasing her while she screamed. He looked up at us and smiled. Before I knew what I was doing, I was already moving, running to put myself between them. I didn't think about it. I just moved instinctively. Even with that, my wife got there faster. It was like a movie on fast forward. She got to our son and bashed his hand away, knocking the knife across the room and then shoved him with her whole body weight. So hard that he flew away from the crib and bounced off the wall. I picked up my daughter and held her while my wife screened us. I could see her shaking, almost convulsing. I can remember the smell of the room, the sound of my daughter screaming and wailing, the look on my son's face as he stood there. Just nothing. Blank, dead. There was nothing in his eyes, no emotion. He looked like an alien to me. I watched my wife take a step toward him. I could have reached out and stopped her, but I didn't. She stepped forward again, very close to him. I could have stopped her again, but I didn't. She waited, looking at him for maybe 3 to 5 seconds without moving, and then she punched him in the face. Now, until this point, you may have been picturing my wife as a typical woman. Small frame, dainty, delicate. This is not the case. My wife does have a small frame, but dainty and delicate she is not. Never has been since I've known her. Since her early teens, my wife has been a boxer. MMA didn't exist back then, but karate and boxing were big in those days, and my wife was a very talented amateur. She was about 130 pounds. She carried a lot of muscle, and she knew how to punch. I had 70 pounds on her back then, and I have no doubt that in a real fight between me and her she could have and would have pounded me flat. Neither of us had ever laid a hand on our son in anger before, but something broke in her that day, and all the years of anger and pain and sorrow and frustration just came pouring out. When she hit him, his head snapped back and blood started pouring out his nose. He hardly reacted. He just looked at her with a shocked expression, like he didn't know how to process what had just happened. She waited another second, and then she hit him again. I could have reached out and stopped her. I could have dragged her out of the room, taken her away, calmed her. I didn't. I just stood there and watched while she systematically started to pound him to a pulp. Every time he brought his hands to cover one part, she would blast him somewhere else. Body, head, over and over. He started screaming, crying out, yelling for her to stop. It's the most genuine reaction I'd ever seen him have to anything in his whole life. But she wasn't stopping. I watched her ramping up, hitting harder, faster, working him like a heavy bag. He tried to swing at her, and she slipped him easily. She was on autopilot, sinking down into her training. I stood there watching for a minute. Then I turned my back on them and took my daughter out of the room. I brought my daughter to the kitchen and gave her a bath in the sink. I found that he'd cut her a 3rd time on the sole of her foot. All the cuts were superficial. I cleaned her up and held her until she calmed. I put Polysporin and Band-Aids on her cuts. In our bedroom, I could hear my son screaming, calling my wife horrible names, telling her he would cut her head off and fuck her corpse. After a while, I didn't hear him say anything anymore, didn't even hear him crying out. I assumed that he must have been knocked out, but I could still hear her beating him. That went on for a long time, long enough for my daughter to drift off to sleep in my arms. I just sat at the kitchen table waiting for her to finish. Finally, she came out and sat down across from me. Her hands were swollen and red. Her face and arms were splattered with blood. Her chest was heaving. We just stared at each other without saying anything. After a while, I asked her, "Is he dead?" She looked back at me and answered, "I fucking hope so." I nodded. That was all there was to say about that. I understood how she felt perfectly. I felt the same. I didn't know what to do, so we just sat there waiting silently. Eventually, my wife started crying and went to go take a shower. I just stayed where I was holding our daughter. After a long while, I heard moaning and sobbing coming from our room. It turned out that my son wasn't dead. I went in to see how bad it was, and it was pretty bad. I've never seen a more merciless beating laid onto anyone, before or since. He was lying on the floor, rolling around with blood leaking out his face, lying in a pool of vomit. His nose was squashed flat out across his face. Both of his eyes were completely swollen shut and starting to blacken already. I could see that a couple of his fingers were bent out at weird angles, and he had pissed his pants. I think he must have been missing teeth, but I couldn't see any on the floor, and I couldn't see inside his mouth. His lips were all puffed up and swollen. From talking to my wife about it later, I know now that she had systematically beaten every part of his body, focusing heavily on his legs. She told me she kicked him in the groin repeatedly until her legs got tired, and had kept beating his body long after he had passed out. When my wife came out of the shower, I still didn't know what to do about our son. I didn't know whether to call the police or an ambulance, take him to the hospital myself. I honestly didn't have any idea what to do. After a while, I realized that I simply didn't care what happened to him anymore, and we decided to just let him live or die on his own. There was an in-law suite in the basement that we had never really used, and my wife, my daughter, and I just moved down there. We simply ceded the top floor of the house to my son and locked everything down, separated our lives entirely. There was plenty of food in the upstairs cabinets, enough for a couple weeks or more. He had a washroom and bedrooms to use. We had a washroom in the basement, a small kitchenette, and a separate entrance, so we just stopped going upstairs. We just decided we were done with him. I figured we'd let his food run out and see what happened. Over the next week, we could hear him moving around upstairs sometimes. I think he just spent most of the time lying in bed recovering. I went to work, watching on high alert in case he attacked me in the driveway, but he never did. My wife stayed home with our daughter. She was never out of our sight. One night we heard him going ballistic, smashing things and banging. We didn't respond. He never tried to get downstairs or get near us, though. I think he was afraid that if he got near us again, my wife might finish the job on him. After 3 weeks down in the basement, we hadn't heard anything from up above for a few days, and I ventured upstairs to the main floor of the house. The place was demolished, and there was no sign of my son. He was gone. It took months to repair the damage he had done and get the main floor back to normal again. There was food and shit smeared all over the walls and broken glass on the floor, big holes in the drywall. He had ripped the place apart. He tore up the linoleum in a corner of the kitchen and emptied an entire foam fire extinguisher into the living room. I feel thankful that he didn't burn the house down with us in it. I'm honestly not sure why he didn't. The kid wasn't shy about lighting things on fire. After that, I lived in fear every day that he would come back, that he would ambush us out of the blue and try to kill us. We moved house about 3 years later, and I finally stopped being afraid that he would show up again, as now he had no idea where we were. I finally felt safe from him. All this happened a long time ago. My son was born in the spring of 1971. My daughter was born in '88. I'm an old man now. I'll be 70 this year, and my wife passed from cancer in 2016. My daughter is 31 now. I moved in with her and her husband after my wife passed. I've got 2 granddaughters, and they're the joy of my life. I see a therapist a couple times a month to talk about all this. I don't know where my son is. The last time I saw him was when he was lying on the floor of our bedroom, bleeding and smashed. I haven't heard from him since he left, more than 30 years now. I don't want to. I carry a lot of guilt from that time and a lot of conflicted emotions. I didn't beat him myself, but I allowed him to be beaten, and I thought he deserved it. I was happy it happened. I didn't try to kill him, but I would have been happy if he died. I will say that I do hope he was able to overcome his demons and go live a normal life somewhere. If he wasn't able to do that, if he stayed the way he was, then I truly do hope someone out there killed him. When I knew him, he was a rabid dog. And whichever way it went, I just hope he isn't still out there hurting anyone else. So that was the first story, and holy shit, that was one of the most messed up, disturbing stories I have ever read. Just what a heartbreaking and terrifying story, but I will be honest, it does sound a little fake to me. Because the part in the story he was talking about his son in his daughter's room just sounds like from that movie, We Need to Talk About Kevin. And by the way, that is a fantastic movie, but disturbing. But good. But let's get to the next story. My wife cheated. I'm not going to tell her I know yet. So I confirmed my wife had an affair. We've been together for almost a decade this year. Married for 7. We met abroad in her country, and we moved back to my home country in 2020 during COVID. I had suspicions she may have cheated on me before, but not enough to really go on. Last year, she asked if she could go back to her home country to see friends and family. Of course, no problem. She had a great few-week trip, posted pictures, and traveled around a bit. When she gets back from her trip, her behavior changes. She's guarded and secretive over her phone, whereas before she would just leave it out with all apps open all the time before. I never even bothered looking at her phone before, but I do notice these behavior changes. Now her phone is with her all the time. Apps are being closed and logged out of. We've always shared our passwords, so it's really just one extra layer of hiding something. We were scrolling through some photos of our kids together, and I noticed some questionable photos of her on her phone. Topless. Intimate style photos that you would send to someone else if that makes sense. Bet I do something I'm not proud of. I looked through her phone. I want to confirm my suspicions, and I didn't want to be brushed off or gaslit. Now I know this is a huge violation of trust, and I felt sick doing it. But I feel like there was enough reasoning on my end to do it. What I found hit like a pile of bricks. Like a gut punch from the only person I've told so many things to and shared so much time with, the mother of our kids, the woman I sponsored come here. She needed to go back to her home country for about a year in 2021 to finish school. Flight times between our countries is 10 plus hours, so traveling back only happens once every few years. During this time, she had a 1-year physical affair, followed by an emotional affair via text/call. She even referenced him as her ex-boyfriend to a friend of hers, because according to her, me and her were separated at the time, which is news to me since I was raising our kid on my own while working and saving so she could finish her first degree. The emotional affair was sporadic, and all her messages were deleted at the beginning of 2024. So, I don't have anything before then. The last couple of years, though, before she even went on this recent trip, she messaged her ex-boyfriend to try and coordinate so she could meet up with him when she was out there. She picked a place close to where he lived for her travel plans, and mentioned to her friend that was one of the reasons she went out there. Funny enough, they didn't meet up. She was on a trip with one of her girlfriends, and she tried to get him out to her, and even offered to get him a hotel room. The location was only a few hours from where he lived, and it sounded like it was too long of a drive for him, and he didn't go because of a new job or something. They video chatted for a bit instead before she came home, and now they've started exchanging naked pictures and sexting. Not only that, she also texted a different person from her home country her clean STD test results that she had just received a month after she got back, that her doctor ordered for some reason. The only time I share my STD test results to anyone is to people that I'm intimate with, but maybe that's just me. I found messages of other people from her home country too, but it doesn't seem like they met up. Just exchanged nude/sexy photos and chatted briefly/sexting, or so it seems at least. She referenced these guys as her virtual boyfriends, her friend, and I found an AI search for her where she states she wants a real relationship. She talks to these guys daily. There's a few of them. This part I'm not as upset about. This could be something like exhibitionism, like other people telling her she's hot to make her feel better about herself. I am upset that she's constantly messaging them instead of being attentive to the kids. Literally, she will ignore the kids and give them TV all day so she can study/message her virtual boyfriends. I needed to screenshot them so I could translate the messages and understand what was being said since all communications were in her native language, which means I also have my proof for her if she tries to gaslight me. But I don't think I'll ever share these with her. She knows what she did, and I now have the confidence to stay in my stance. For one, a relationship part. I get it, we have 2 kids. I work a full-time job, and I've been going back to school for my master's while she goes back to school as well. We're both busy, and we literally haven't had a date night in years because we have no one that we trust that can watch the kids past 8 p.m. We also live with my parents currently because it's really expensive where we live, and we've been saving for a house to move out on our own. I'm not a perfect husband. While I am loyal, I could definitely pay her more attention. The dilemma, she's the mother of my kids, and we live with my parents. If we separated, she would most definitely move out while finishing her school, and then I would only get to see the kids half the time. We would likely get joint custody being a no-fault area, meaning I lose out on the best part of my life half the time by going down that route. Additionally, it would be a tough situation for a while. Ultimately, she is the mother of my kids, so I do want her to have a successful life. The plan: patience. I'm going to let her continue to have her emotional affair for now. I'm confident she's not having a physical affair with anyone here, at least yet. Our already healthy intimate life has greatly improved recently. She's doing things she's never tried before. It was already great, but now, I'll spare you the details. She knows she had a physical and ongoing emotional affair. She just doesn't know that I now know too, yet. I'm going to wait until she makes a plan to go back to her home country again, or even if she just casually brings it up like she wants to go back. It would be easier to serve her papers at the airport when she's going back to visit. But that won't be for a while. Otherwise, I would have to serve her papers while we both live with my parents, completely blowing up our lives. Additionally, we've saved a large amount of cash by living with my parents that we were going to use as a down payment on a house. I guess those plans are squashed. At this point, it's 100% up to her if she wants to try and save the marriage. But it doesn't seem like she does, and I'm focusing on preparing myself first. If she really wants to hook up with other people, maybe we could be swingers or something. But there needs to be communication and openness between us. I'm open to inviting some kink into our relationship if that's what she needs. Though it's not fair she gets to play around, and I don't. It either goes both ways or not at all. There's a lot of trust that needs to be rebuilt. One concern I have is that I don't know if I'll ever trust her to go traveling abroad alone like that again, considering the circumstances. In the interim, I'm going to focus on myself. I've started working out again and getting back in shape. I feel more free than before. I would always dote on my wife to friends and strangers, but now I feel I'm allowed to flirt back instead. I should also be graduating with my master's in a few months too. I'm not looking for legal advice here. I'm familiar with my legal options, and I will consult a lawyer more familiar with my local laws. I don't know how this will go. TLDR. Found out my wife had an affair. Blowing up our current living situation is an option right now. So I haven't told her I know while I bide my time and prepare for whatever comes next. So that was something. I'll be honest, he kind of lost me many times reading this story. Overall, I'm on his side. His wife is 100% in the wrong, cheating in any situation, and just a disgusting thing to do. But also looking through someone's phone without them knowing is kind of a dick move. And if you're having any suspecting anything on your partner in the first place, that should tell you everything. And what confuses me more is he has confronted her, and it seems he's trying to start talking to other women. So they are still together, it seems, and they are both planning on cheating. So I take it back. If that's the case, they are both wrong. Anyway, let's get to the next story. This next story was from the Who's the Dumbest Person You've Ever Met? Comment section. Kevin, it's not uncommon as a teacher to have students who are a bit behind the curve in certain aspects, but 99.99999% of the time, they are keen on something. They might not understand how to identify a noun or what theme is, but they somehow know how to make a mean plate of nachos. You learn pretty quick to not judge fish for their tree climbing ability, you know? I thought this was a rule when I was teaching until I met Kevin. Kevin isn't his real name, but it doesn't matter because he can't spell anyway. Kevin was a student of mine during my last year of teaching. He came to my classroom with very little to show for his academic past. He had moved a few times, and thus was missing a lot of typical test scores that we use to try and ballpark their ability. Don't worry, it was a ballpark. We didn't make major decisions until we actually had a chance to talk and work with a student for a bit. I thought, that's fine. I'll just do some one-on-one with Kevin and see what's up. One-on-one with Kevin was like conversing with someone who'd forgotten everything in a freak, if not impossible, amnesia incident. There was no evidence that he had learned anything past the second grade. And now he was in 9th grade. Flabbergasted. I figured we needed to get more serious with this. If he was going to be in my class, I needed to know why and how. I decided to meet with him, his guidance counselor, his parents, and another teacher to see what was really going on. This is where it all became clear. It was by some incredible fluke that his family had been wiped off the face of the earth years ago. Odds are his entire heritage was based on blind luck and some type of sick divine intervention that saves his family every time a threat presents itself. Kevin was a genetic pinnacle of this null achievement. Even my instructional lead, a woman who could find a redeeming trait in a Balrog, fail to see any reason this kid or his family should be alive today. So here's a list of events that made it abundantly clear that God exists, and he's laughing uncontrollably. Kevin frequently forgot when / where class was. On more than one occasion, I had to retrieve him from other classrooms. Kevin ate an entire 24-pack of crayons, puked, and then did it again the next day. This is 9th grade. I have no idea where he got crayons. Kevin's dad wrote tuition checks and mailed them to me, his English teacher. This was a public school. When I gave it back to Kevin, voided, to give to his dad with a brief note explaining that this is a public school, Kevin got in trouble for trying to spend it at 711 after school. Kevin was removed from the culinary arts program after leaving a cutting board on the gas stove and starting a fire twice. Kevin threw his lunch at the school resource officer and tried to run away. He ran into a door and insisted it wasn't him. Kevin stole my phone during class. I called it. It rang. He denied that it was ringing. Not that it wasn't his. Not that he did it. No, he denied that the phone was actually ringing. He tried it 3 times before the end of the year. Kevin called the basketball coach a motherfucking bitch during gym. Basketball tryouts were that afternoon. Kevin tried out. It didn't go well. Kevin's mom could never remember which school he went to. She missed several meetings because she drove other schools, none of which he ever went to. Kevin tazzed himself in the neck before a football game. Kevin kept a bottle of orange Kool-Aid in his backpack for about 4 months. He thought it would turn into alcohol. He drank it during homeroom and threw up. Kevin say the N-word a lot. Kevin was white. The high school was 84% black. Kevin got beat up a lot. Kevin stole another student's iPhone and tried to sell it back to them. Kevin didn't understand that his grade was dependent on tests, quizzes, homework, classwork, and participation. Kevin finished his first semester with a 3% average. He tried to bribe me with $11. Kevin spit on a girl and said, "You should get out of those wet clothes." The girl was a Spanish student teacher. Kevin didn't know dogs and cats were different animals. Kevin tried to download porn onto a computer in the library at the circulation desk. While he was logged on, Kevin asked a girl to prom. He was in 9th grade and freshmen don't go to prom, by asking for a phone number and then texting her his address. Kevin got gum in his hair constantly. Kevin regularly tried to cheat on assignments by knocking the pile over, grabbing one before I picked them all up, and then writing a name on it wherever there was room. Kevin had several allergies, but neither his parents nor he could remember what they were. They were very concerned that the holiday party, it's high school, we don't have those, would have peanuts. When they finally got a doctor's note, he was allergic to amoxicillin. Kevin and his parents took a trip to Nassau. How the fuck did they even get airline tickets? And forgot all their luggage at home. I didn't believe him when he told me until I talked to his mom, who told me first thing when I saw her at the bi-weekly meeting. Kevin's grandfather apparently died in a chainsaw accident. I can only assume God was looking the other way that day. What the fuck? I'm sorry that story sounds so cartoonishly fake. Like it wasn't even a story, it was just a list of why this guy Kevin was dumb. Like at first, I thought he was just on a certain spectrum, but it seems like no, he's just dumb. I really have nothing else to say. Let's just get to the next story. By the way, this next story is a part of a series, so I'm just going to read part 1. I dare my best friend to ruin my life. He's succeeding. My name is Xander, and my best friend is trying to ruin my life. It started out very small, but has quickly grown out of control. I'm currently sitting inside a church, using their Wi-Fi to post a story and taking advantage of their air conditioning. I'm posting this story in case. Well, in case he finds me and kills me soon. It's only a matter of time now, and I want someone to know what happened before I die. 2 years ago, my friend Dave and I were sitting on the couch at my house thoroughly bored. It wasn't a temporary boredom either. It was a resounding boredom with life. We both worked full-time at the local movie theater, making minimum wage, and cleaning up after idiots who couldn't keep popcorn and soda in their mouths. We had graduated high school 2 years prior and had no plans to attend college. Life looked bleak for us. College didn't sound appealing. Work was annoying, and the little free time we had was blown on video games and YouTube. We both still lived with our parents too, which made dating somewhat embarrassing. Looking back, I'm sure we were suffering from mild depression on top of everything else. These life circumstances blended together to create the perfect storm for what I now have to call my reality. As we sat on the couch at my parents' house, channel surfing the TV, David asked me if I was bored with life. I responded in the positive, and he sighed. High school was so easy because we knew our purpose and our goals were set for us. Outline the English essay, finish the math homework, get decent grades, pass the driving exam, be home by curfew, find a girlfriend. Now that we're out of high school, there's no structure. Our lives have become meaningless, and we are just floating through space with no aim or purpose. Would you go back to high school then? I asked. He shook his head. In the moment, high school was annoying. It's only after looking back that I see how much better it was than I realized. What's the solution then? I asked. Either go somewhere that has structure and can deliver what high school gave us, or create our own structure. David replied. Well, I don't want to go to college or the military, I said, and I can't think of anywhere else that provides the same structure. Guess I have to make my own, but I have no idea where to start. The thing about high school was that it required a minimum effort. If you didn't give that minimum effort, you would face the consequences. The consequences were bad enough that you and I would put effort into school. When high school ended, that minimum effort level decreased. Now our minimum effort is not enough to improve ourselves. Whatever structure we build has to have those consequences built in and a minimum effort that forces us to improve constantly. David was and is a very intellectual person. He thinks about everything. If you can't already tell, I was pretty dumb compared to him, but I stuck around because he always had interesting things to say. This conversation definitely counted as interesting. I won't bore you with the entire conversation that we had, but it lasted an hour where we discussed how to build structure into our lives. I want to emphasize here that boredom is dangerous. Well, it's not dangerous by itself, but it can quickly lead to dangerous things. Boredom can lead to pain, accidental children, technology that disrupts a monopoly, and even death. Our boredom led to a dare. I dare you to try and ruin my life, David said. What does that mean? I asked. It's a way to build structure into my life. If I know that you're always trying to ruin my life and actively trying to make me fail, then I am driven to fight back and act on initiative. But how could I ruin your life? I asked. You could ruin anyone's life if you gave enough thought, planning, and action, David said with a smirk. I'm not going to give you any ideas. I just want you to try and ruin my life. I remember sitting back and thinking about what he meant. The first thoughts that came to mind were about tripping him occasionally or hiding his toothbrush every time I went to his house. My young mind didn't fully understand how serious David was being. His mind was running 3 tracks above mine. So I didn't know what I was getting into when I said, okay, I'll try to ruin your life, but I dare you to try and ruin my life as well. He smiled with newfound enthusiasm, and I smiled back. I had hoped it would be a great way to relieve my boredom with life. David stood up and punched me in the leg as hard as he could. I shouted at him, mostly out of surprise. He just laughed. The dare starts now, he said, grabbing his shoes. We are no longer friends. We are nemesis. He opened my front door and looked over his shoulder. Good luck, he said. I hope you'll work half as hard as I will. Once he left, I just sat there rubbing my sore thigh. Okay, I thought, if he wants a war, he'll get a war. That night, I had laid awake trying to think of ways to make his life harder for him. My ideas were all so childish and useless compared to what he would later throw at me. I'm too embarrassed to list my ideas from back then. I wish I could say I remember the day David turned against me for real, but it was so subtle that I didn't notice right away. To my face, David acted completely normal. While we were at work, I would sprinkle popcorn over a section he had just cleaned and point out to him. He would just laugh and say, "Is that supposed to ruin my life?" Then he would clean it up. I expected him to do the same to me, but he didn't. His lack of visible retaliation made me bored again, so I stopped, looking back. I suspect that behind my back, he was sabotaging my image with our other coworkers and our boss. Out of the blue, my boss called me into his office and told me that I was fired because I wasn't doing a good enough job. David acted sorry I was leaving, and we promised to hang out again soon. I left, thinking I could make this something good and get a real job. That dream died, and I ended up at McDonald's instead. After I had been at McDonald's for a month or so, my parents confronted me. They asked me if I had been stealing cash from their wallets. I had never stolen a cent from them and told them so. They backed off, but only for a week until my mom's debit card went missing. They confronted me again, this time very angry. They accused me of withdrawing several $100s using my mom's debit card. I have no siblings, so it wouldn't have been anyone else in the house. It turned into a screaming match, and they demanded that I move out as quickly as possible. With my small cash of savings, I found an apartment near the local community college that housed college students. The rent was affordable enough for me. I moved in and became instant friends with two of my roommates, Clark and Ivan. Our other roommate, Isaac, kept to himself and stayed in his room playing video games 24/7. Life got good again because I hung out with Clark and Ivan frequently. David and I had stopped hanging out after I was fired from a movie theater. I hadn't forgotten about him, but I had forgotten about the dare. Every once in a while, I would message him on Facebook or shoot him a text to ask if he wanted to hang out, but my messages were always ignored. Eventually, I gave up. Within 6 months, I had a great life going. I was dating a girl named Katie. I had been promoted to crew trainer at McDonald's, which paid better, and my bank account was slowly growing. I only recognized this as David's doing when I look back, but an obscene amount of junk mail showed up with my name on it every single day. Magazines, credit card offers, vacation ads, and even physical letters from real people who claimed to be excited to be my new pen pal. I sorted through them every day trying to find some pattern. Clark and Ivan thought it was hilarious. When I came home late from work, they would sometimes toss the junk mail in the air like confetti as I walked through the door, cheering that the mail king was home. One day, I remember feeling sick of getting all this junk mail and decided to sit down, call every subscription to cancel. I recruited Clark and Ivan to help me, and we sat down with snacks one afternoon and started to crank through phone calls. In a few days, the tide of junk mail subsided, and we celebrated our efforts. That only lasted a week. The next week, it started coming back in full force. There was twice as much as before, and even some pornographic magazines in the mix. Not only did my physical junk mail increase, but my email became unnavigable through all the new spam messages. Google moved a lot of it to the spam filter, but there were still hundreds of emails that made it through. My email had been subscribed to websites I'd never even heard of. Clark and Ivan were blown away by the new tide of junk mail. The event was dubbed Return of the Junk, and became a great icebreaker for Clark and Ivan to introduce me to other people at parties. One day I was browsing Facebook's People You May Know section when I came across someone's profile that had my picture, but a different name. The account was open for anyone to view and had a lot of porn posts, status updates full of swearing, and praises to Hitler. I frowned when I clicked on their pictures. Most of the pictures were the same ones from my Facebook account, but there were some pictures of me that weren't on my account or anywhere else online. Keep in mind, I didn't remember my Dare David, so I was feeling pretty creeped out. I hit the report button and let Facebook know that the account was a fake and went on my way. I think 3 months or so later is when more stuff started to happen. Katie and I are getting very serious and discuss moving in together. The junk mail still rolls in, and I've started to just throw it away. Ivan has moved out to go to an actual university, so a new roommate Jackson has moved in. Clark and I attempted to befriend Jackson, but he's similar to Isaac and locked himself in his room most of the time. A new game became available for pre-order, so I submitted my email to reserve a copy. When I tried to log into my email to make sure the reserve code was there, I couldn't log in. I hit forgot password, and it asked if I wanted to use my phone number to reset the password. I pressed yes and waited for my phone to light up. It never did. I pressed the button 3 more times, but no text ever came. I tried old passwords I used to use, but none of them worked. I frowned, but eventually just walked away from my computer. I tried again a different day. I sat down on the couch and pulled up Facebook on my phone. A pop-up appeared. "You've been signed out," it said. Then it jumped to the login screen. I thought I'd hit the log out button on accident, so I just typed in my email and password. It didn't work. I tried again, but it still told me the password was incorrect. My phone buzzed in my hand. Katie was calling me. I answered it and immediately became concerned. She was sobbing. "Katie," I said. "You coward," she spat. "You don't get to just Facebook me that shit. No, you have to talk to me and tell me with your voice." "Katie, what are you talking about?" I asked. "Don't play stupid, asshole. Say it." "Say what?" "You Facebook me and say we are through. But when I call, you deny everything? What the hell are you trying to pull, Xander?" Katie hissed. "Katie, my Facebook got hacked. I was literally just trying to log in when you called. Are you at home? I'm coming over. We are not done. We are far from done. Sweetheart." It took me some time to convince Katie that it hadn't been me, but she relented when I showed her that I couldn't log in. I Googled how to get my Facebook account back and contacted their help center. Thankfully, they were able to get me back into my account. A lot of links to porn sites have been posted all over my page by whoever jacked my account. So I spent time deleting all of those. I also spent time answering family members who asked about the strange content I had been posting. Awkward. Katie also found out through her feeds that my Twitter and Instagram had been hacked. The accounts were posting hundreds of crude messages and pictures. Those two sites took a little more effort, but eventually I regained control over those two. Fixing my email took a couple of days, but I got access again, not wanting to repeat the experience. I made my passwords into really long strings of numbers, letters, and symbols. Each account had a different password. For anyone who has done this, you know how impossible it would be to memorize your passwords. I wrote them down on a sheet of paper and put it in my dresser drawer. I didn't intend to get hacked again. I'm telling you where I put the paper so you'll know how freaked out I was when Facebook signed me out again the next week. I checked my other accounts. Locked out again. I shot Katie a text to warn her and then called the Facebook Help Center again. They gave me access to Facebook and gave me the same warning about making a long password. When I told them the type of precautions I had taken last time, they suggested checking my computer for viruses in case there was a keylogger collecting all the information I typed. I called a computer repair center and asked what I needed to do to get my computer scanned. They asked me to bring it down and they'd check it out. I had a desktop. So bringing it down required a lot of unplugging. When I got down behind computer to unplug everything, I found a tiny USB stick that I'd never seen before. I frowned and tried to locate its contents on the computer. The computer said no USB was attached. The computer repair guy confirmed that the USB drive was a keylogger. He asked if my computer had ever been anywhere that anyone could walk up and use it. I told him no, and he said he had no idea how it could have gotten there. He didn't charge me anything, just warned me to keep an eye on my computer. I changed all my passwords again, going through the motions to get my accounts back. A few days later, I received three credit card bills in the mail. A few days later, I received three credit card bills in the mail. I still had the habit of skimming through the junk mail in case there ever was anything super important. I'm glad I did, because I might never have found out about the credit cards that were registered in my name. I called the credit card companies to inform them that they were mistaken. I had never signed up for a credit card. My parents had warned me about them so often that I'd been deterred from ever getting one. Before you comment and tell me I need them to build my credit, yes, I know that now. A quick Google search told me what to do next. I called Equifax, which is a company that calculates your credit score and tells creditors that it's okay for you to open a credit account. I placed a 90-day fraud alert on my credit. They said they would call me if anyone tried to open a credit account in my name. The dude at Equifax was kind enough to tell me what I needed to do next. He asked me to go online and view my credit report. If I saw any accounts I didn't recognize, I was to write them down and fill out a complaint to the Federal Trade Commission and FTC, explaining the situation. Once I had that submitted, I was to file a copy of it with the police and create a police report. Then I had to take those two reports and call each of the credit companies that had issued credit to my identity and start the dispute process. I instantly felt very discouraged at the amount of effort this would require. It felt utterly insane to be required to follow all these steps just because I was a victim of identity theft. Goddamn. Clark was horrified at what had happened and looked at his credit score. He was relieved when it came back clean. I made Katie check hers too, just in case. Also clean. I'll take a minute to tell everyone reading that you are entitled by law to 1 free credit report per year from each of the 3 credit score companies. That means you can and should check your credit 3 times a year. Clark and I set reminders on our phones to check the scores again in 4 months. I asked Katie to do the same. When I first found out about the accounts, I had called my parents to ask if they had opened any accounts in my name. If they had, I'd at least know who the culprit was. They told me they hadn't opened any accounts, and I warned them about my problems. They promised to check their credit score. 2 weeks after I'd called them, my dad called. They found 15 fraudulent accounts between the 2 of them. What the hell? I told him the steps he needed to take, and he was grateful for my help and warning. I know this is boring to read, but I want you to realize how insanely painful it was to fix all of this shit. Seriously, watch your credit reports and nip identity theft in the bud before it happens to you. I had requested detailed bills from the credit card companies that had issued the fraudulent accounts, and they mailed them to me. The bills were full of online purchases. The accounts had been opened almost a year ago, and in that time the thief had spent $62,000 between all the fraudulent accounts. I was pretty upset that in a full year, I had only just found any credit card bills in the mail. I must have been tossing them with the mountains of junk mail. Now I know that the masses of junk mail were deliberate and calculated, so the bills would blend in and hopefully get thrown away. The first few transactions were from stores like Target, Walmart, etc., but the further down I went, the less I recognized. One word stuck out to me: Bitcoin. I had learned a little about it from my Facebook feed, as I had some friends from high school who touted it as the next real currency. According to the credit card statements, several $1,000s had been exchanged into Bitcoin. I started really researching Bitcoin and trying to figure out what it was and why an identity thief would want it. To make the explanation short, Bitcoin allowed my thief to make completely anonymous purchases online. It was as if he'd gone to an ATM and drained all the credit cards into cash. I didn't foresee the credit card companies ever getting their money back. David now had a hell of a lot of cash he could use to ruin my life. I didn't know it was him at the time, obviously, but now I do. Guys, identity theft is a serious crime and is very damaging to everyone in the economy. And while the theft had been bad, my life was about to get a whole lot worse. That's all I have time to write for now. I have to go and get some serious shit taken care of. I'll write again as soon as I can. My name is Xander, and my best friend is trying to ruin my life. So right off the bat, I think this is a fake story or an ARG series type of thing. But that being said, I'm very interested in how it plays out. Maybe I'll cover the series in the next Dark Souls video. But I think that's going to do it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed these stories. And even though some of them or most of them were pretty dark, hopefully it was a relaxing experience for you guys. But as we finish Sen's Fortress, the narration ends here. I'll see you guys in the next video.
You are a rare visitor. Welcome to the lost city of Anolondo, chosen undead. If you seek Lord Gwyn's old keep, exit here and head straight yonder. If you are the chosen one, a revelation shall visit thee. What follows thereafter depends upon you. If you require, that is, after all, what the bonfire is for. What is it? What am I? Well, I am the keeper of the bonfire. If not for me, a gatekeeper and a guide. That is my calling.